Imagine trying to save all of human knowledge before the world ends. Every myth, every law, every secret ever pressed into clay. One king believed he could do it. He gathered texts from across the ancient world, built the greatest library humanity had ever seen, and tried to preserve memory itself against time, war, and death. And then it vanished, buried beneath fire and collapsing empire, lost for more than 2,000 years. This is the story of the Library of Ashurbanipal, and the moment the memory of the ancient world came closer than ever to disappearing forever. In the 7th century BC, at the height of Assyria's terrifying power, there ruled a king unlike any before him. Ashurbanipal was not only a conqueror, he was a reader. In a world where most rulers could barely write their own names, he studied languages, decoded ancient scripts, and searched for knowledge older than his empire itself. To him, wisdom was not decoration, it was survival, because knowledge could interpret omens, predict threats, and hold chaos at bay. So he began an impossible mission: to collect every written work in existence. Messengers crossed Mesopotamia, Babylon, Uruk, cities already fading into dust. They carried a simple order: send everything. Your myths, your rituals, your science, your records, your secrets. Nothing was too sacred, nothing too small. And in Nineveh, tablet by tablet, memory began to take physical form. Rows of clay filled chamber after chamber, hymns to forgotten gods, medical remedies carved by steady hands, astronomical charts tracking the movement of the heavens, omens predicting the fate of kings, and among them, stories already ancient when Assyria was young, floods that swallowed the world, monsters guarding immortality, a king named Gilgamesh searching for life beyond death. This was not just a collection. It was humanity's attempt to refuse forgetting. And for a brief moment, inside the walls of Nineveh, it almost worked. But knowledge cannot defend itself. And outside the walls, an army was coming. In 612 BC, the end arrived, not as a whisper, but as fire. Babylonians and Medes surrounded Nineveh, one of the greatest cities of its age. For generations, its massive walls had seemed untouchable, its armies unstoppable, its kings chosen by the gods. Now those walls shook. Battering rams struck stone, arrows darkened the sky. Smoke rolled across rooftops like a living thing. Inside the city, fear spread faster than flame. Families fled through narrow streets, temples filled with desperate prayers. Soldiers fought not for glory, but for survival. And inside the royal library, where the memory of civilizations had been gathered, the future trembled. Shelves splintered, roofs collapsed. Thousands of tablets crashed into rubble and fire. Some shattered instantly. Others were buried beneath debris. Every myth, every law, every voice, balanced on the edge of permanent silence. Nineveh fell. Assyria vanished. An empire that had dominated the Near East for centuries was reduced to ash and dust. And as the ruins settled, the library disappeared with it. Not destroyed in memory, destroyed in awareness. For centuries, no one even remembered it had existed. But destruction did something no one expected. The same fire that consumed the city hardened the clay. Intense heat baked the tablets like pottery in a kiln. What should have turned to dust became stone. Buried beneath collapsed walls, sealed by rubble and time, the words endured. In darkness, in silence. Through the rise and fall of empires, Persia rose, Greece conquered, Rome ruled. And still, beneath the earth, the tablets waited. More than 2,000 years later, archaeologists digging into the ancient mounds of Nineveh began uncovering fragments of clay. Broken shards at first, then lines of writing, then entire tablets. They did not yet understand what they were holding. Only later, as scholars deciphered the wedge-shaped cuneiform signs, did the truth emerge. This was not merely a royal archive. It was one of humanity's first great libraries, a deliberate attempt to gather knowledge systematically. And among those fragments was something extraordinary. The oldest epic ever written, Gilgamesh. When the flood narrative was translated, scholars were stunned. This story predated much of the literature known in the West. It echoed themes that would later appear in sacred texts. If those tablets had been reduced to powder, we would not know his name. We would not know the first hero. We would not know one of the earliest surviving epics in human history. An entire dimension of early human thought would have vanished, not because it never existed, but because it did not survive. But not everything survived. Many tablets were shattered beyond recovery. Some remain buried, others may never be found. What was written on them? Astronomical observations lost to time, medical insights centuries ahead of their era, political debates, myths that reshaped entire civilizations, or ideas so ordinary that their absence now feels invisible. That is the unsettling truth. We do not just lose knowledge, we lose awareness that we ever possessed it. History does not preserve everything. It preserves what survives catastrophe. And sometimes, survival is chance. Ashurbanipal could not save his empire. He could not stop war. He could not escape death. But he preserved something stranger. Voices. Voices that outlived armies, outlived cities, outlived the king himself. Cities burn, empires fall, names fade. But words, if they endure, can cross millennia and speak again. That is why the Library of Ashurbanipal still matters, not only as history, but as warning. Every civilization believes its knowledge is secure. Nineveh proves otherwise. Memory is fragile. Forgetting is closer than we think. And the future belongs to what we fight to preserve. Subscribe to Immortal Kings for cinematic journeys into ancient mysteries, forgotten civilizations, and the first heroes of humanity. Because the deeper you go into the past, the more you realize history isn't what we know. History is what survived. And some stories are still waiting to be found.